So, Natalie, let's talk about one of the other guarantees, which is the endowment at birth. I feel like this is one that is not talked about that often. So, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so this is one of the newer ideas, a guaranteed inheritance or a baby bond, as it's colloquially called. And, this is building on the work of Derek Hamilton, a professor at the New School who's done a lot of thinking about the nature of wealth inequality, the racialized implications of wealth inequality, the fact that, a white family has 8 times the wealth of a Black family in America. And in some places that is in Atlanta, it's a white family has 46 times the wealth of a Black family in America. That is one of the great moral stains of this modern economy is the racial wealth gap. And any sort of income supports, whether it be raising the minimum wage or a guaranteed income, that those are important, but we'll never get at wealth. Wealth is different from income. But one of the things that would get at wealth is a guaranteed inheritance. And the idea is that you'd create an endowment at birth, a bond that would accrue money over the years, and you'd target it by income. And so a low income child, when they turn 18, might have $50,000 in their bond, and a higher income child might have $5,000, but that it would be something that every child in America has. That's one way of articulating the policy idea. And this has gone from the margins to the mainstream in rapid speed. You had Cory Booker running for president on this in the primary of ideas of 2020. And over the course of the last few years, we've seen several states actually pass this idea. So the state of Connecticut has a baby bonds program. Washington, D.C. has passed a baby bonds program. In California, last year, my home state, we had a significant surplus. We were still in the aftermath of COVID policymaking. And Senator Nancy Skinner, a forward-looking legislator in California, created baby bonds in the state of California for children whose parent died of COVID or who are leaving the foster care system. And so I think of this as the laboratories of democracy, where the idea is being worked out at the city level, at the state level, and ultimately can be scaled to the federal level as part of a guarantee economy down the line.
Let me ask you a follow-up question about that. So does that just happen automatically about birth? Because I'm thinking about a friend of mine that grew up with someone. His mother definitely should have had them on benefits, right? But she did not have her act together to get them on benefits. So is this something where a baby is born and there still needs to be something filed to, get the application through? Or is it just like the baby's on the register? This is the account. You turn 18. Here you go.
That is a great question. And that gets to the policy implementation details. There's no reason why we couldn't automatically, we assign social security numbers. There's no reason why we couldn't automatically open accounts for children. I think most of them today, they're really building on the work of the last several decades of something called child savings accounts. And that tended to be parents, a school district or some public entity encouraging parents to open these accounts for their children. And then the entity would start to put, some money in and encourage the parents to save as well. So that's a policy implementation question. And your point, or at least that I'm hearing in the story, is it would be better for kids if it was frictionless and automatic so that they weren't held back by decisions parents made 18 years prior.
Yeah, I mean, this gets to this. There is an aspect of people's dislike or distrust of government that is not just the proliferation of neoliberal ideas and the virtues of the market. And I think some of the critique of neoliberalism has obscured the degree to which many people's experience of government is humiliating, particularly because of the way in which means testing or the way in which the interaction with the bureaucracy, whether it's healthcare reimbursements, whether it's getting your food stamps or qualifying for whatever level of aid, it's a constant supplicant position where no is a potentially devastating answer, and somebody who you have no actual relationship to, literally the nameless bureaucrat, appears to have the power to manifestly make you feel small and harm your life. which is the opposite of a safety net, right? It's like a humiliation net or something. There is a degree to which people simply don't trust government because their experience of government hasn't been trustworthy. Not just the intellectual ideas from the Chicago School and the kind of debates that educated people have about what the nature of the system is. And I do think that's something we need to grapple with as we propose solutions, is that I don't know how that divide gets bridged. I mean, clearly people expect certain basics. I mean, there was a famous, might have been apocryphal, but I think it wasn't, signs at a Trump rally in 2016, government hands off my Medicare, as a kind of an example of, like, there are things that people of all political persuasions expect of government, full stop, whether they're Democrat, whether they're Trumpian or Bernie Sanders progressives. But I'm not sure you get into that a lot in the book, but you've thought about this a lot in terms of what's the role of government. So what do you say to people who just don't believe government is capable of doing anything other than making things worse or complicated or just incredibly intractable?
We're living in the aftermath of the last 45 to 50 years of policymaking that said it's government's job to get out of the way and to leave it to the markets to solve the problems. And people are out, they're on their own to figure out how to make it in this world. And so we've intentionally made it such that government doesn't work in so many instances, and that your experience of government is one that you call humiliating. And that's something that we hear over and over. Not only that, but the story we tell is that if you don't make it, it's your fault. And we hear a lot of conversation about shame for having hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, even though the story in America was that was exactly what you were supposed to do in order to go to college. The shame of having bought a home in 2008 before the crisis hit, and then, your home being worth a quarter of what it was supposed to be. And the shame of getting cancer and then having to go to GoFundMe in order to afford the treatments in the wealthiest nation on earth. And so it's humiliation and shame. And I think it is time for a new story. And I think the book is filled with a few of those stories. Let me tell you about Montgomery County, Maryland. For a long time, government has left housing up to the private market to solve. And here we are with 6 million units short in this country. The inability to build in most cities for a whole host of reasons that we get into in the book, and rent skyrocketing. So a true housing crisis in America. And in Montgomery County, Maryland, the Housing Authority said, we actually think it's our job to ensure that there is housing built in this county that supports middle income earners, that is kept permanently off the speculative market so that it can always be available to middle income earners, and that it's good housing, and that it's housing right on a transit line. And so they shouldered, the financial risk of building housing and worked with private builders and did just that. And that is government working. They now have thousands of units that Montgomery County Marylanders can live in. And we're seeing housing authorities all over the country take note and start to do something similar. So I think we have to look for stories of where government is working and really support that in order to tell a new story of an economy that can ensure the good life.